Hi, everybody. Oh, I sound like a children's presenter there. I've noticed that you can see a lot of my bedroom. Normally, when I come on to the stream, you only see a small portion, but you can see my towels. So it's very unprofessional, so I'm really sorry about that. Can't do anything about it. Sorry. Anyway, hi. Welcome to the 24th episode. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's the 24th episode of our virtual coffee and chat. So I primarily want to know how you guys are and where you guys are joining in from, because we know that people watch this from all over the country, and we've even had people from America watching, which is pretty amazing. And I do know that a lot of you actually watch not live, that you watch the recordings, which is amazing as well. It means that you guys are sharing the message about us, so that's fab. But you can still comment and tell us where you're watching from, what you really liked about each episode. So I'm not sure about you, but I feel this week is kind of a final week of summer. One final week of, hopefully, don't know about you, but we're getting in London warm weather, sunny days, but the nights are getting darker quicker and the days are feeling a bit shorter. So we are slowly but surely getting properly into autumn, which I kind of have a love-hate relationship with. I love the jumpers, I love like wrapping up warm, but I really suffer with the lack of sun. I know there's scientific reasons about that, but it is quite sad about that. So I'm actually very grateful that it means I can work from home, so I can get out in the sun when I need to be. So what are you guys grateful for as well? But also, thankfully, I've got you all for another week to keep me going before we're changing up the format. I'll tell you more about that next week. So if you're new to this, then welcome. This is the virtual coffee and chat, and for 24 glorious weeks, I've been joined by wonderful people who have a connection to the Children's Society. I've been able to chat to not only our chief exec, Mark Russell, but also inspiring young people such as Star, a group of young refugees who are determined to change the future for other children. So if you've missed any, do remember that you can go back and watch it on whichever platform you're watching this on now. So like I said, please do continue commenting and tell us what you love to hear, if you have any questions, or what's been your favourite moment of these past months with us. So today we're going back to the beginning. We're going to go back to the roots of TCS, because I'm joined by Ian, who spreads the word about what the charity does, and he's got quite an interesting title, which I always get wrong. So hi Ian, how are you?
Hi Anna, very well, thank you. Good to see you.
So go on, I'm going to try and pronounce it. Diocesan? No, I've said it wrong already. Please can you introduce yourself?
Fine. My name's Ian. I'm a volunteer, but I've got the title of Diocesan Ambassador for the Diocese of Portsmouth. There we are.
So guys at home, please tell me that I'm not the only one that struggles with that name, because
I might explain a bit about it in a moment, you know.
I've tried practicing it this morning and I was like, I think it's when I just kept repeating it over in my head, I've got it messed up now. So that's why you're here to tell us about it, which is good. Yeah. Where are you today? You're in Portsmouth? Is it sunny?
I'm at home. Actually, I live in Fareham, which is just outside Portsmouth. It's about 10 miles from Portsmouth, but down near the south coast, about a mile from the sea. Very nice.
Oh, lucky. Is it quite nice weather today? Beautiful.
The sun is shining. It's bubbling up the heat. It's lovely.
Oh, yeah. Perfect. What a lovely Wednesday. So like every week, we by accident surprise you and say about the 60-second game. But you've been a great sport and said, even though I forgot to tell you about it before, that you're more than happy to do it. Is that still correct?
Absolutely. What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? There you go. Okay. So you've Still, the highest score is 20. So let's see if you can beat it, okay?
Okay.
I believe in you. Okay. Go. Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Hot weather or cold weather?
Cold weather.
Pepsi or Coke?
Oh, Coke.
Favorite junk food?
Burger King.
Laundry or dishes?
Oh, dishes. Yeah.
Crosswords or Sudokus?
Sudokus.
What do you order at fish and chips?
Haddock and chips.
Cat or dog?
Cat.
What animal would you be?
Cat.
Thick chips or thin chips?
Oh, thick chips. Triple fried.
Chinese or Italian?
Oh, Chinese.
Favorite cereal?
Very dull. Weetabix, probably.
Apple or Android phones?
Oh, Apple, every time.
Chocolate or vanilla?
Chocolate.
Rural or urban?
Rural.
Oh, okay. So you got a grand respectable total of 16.
I'll settle for that. It's good enough.
Which is very good. So that's very respectable. That's in the middle of the leaderboard. So you should be proud of yourself.
Thank you.
So let's get into it then. Can you tell us, for a lot of people, they may not know actually, they may have heard of the Children's Society recently. They may have kind of got to know us because they've gone to one of our services, but they may not know exactly how the Children's Society was funded and why people like your role. Why is it so important?
Well, I'm not sure there's a great deal of detail on the history, but the story that I tell when I'm talking to people, because that's my primary role, telling people about the work of the Society, is I say, well, are you sitting comfortably? Because that's important, because the people who were first helped by the Society were not sitting comfortably. They were sat in the gutter. And it was in Victorian London. And there were two young children sat in the gutter begging because they were starving. They had no food. And they were spotted by their Sunday school teacher, who was a gentleman called Edward Rudolph. And he was just horrified that in the wealthiest city in the world at that stage, there should be kids begging on the street. And he didn't just sort of say poor things and throw them a penny. He said, we've got to do something about it. We've got to take action. We must stop this situation existing if we can. And he was very well connected, because he very quickly got on with the Archbishop of Canterbury. And together they managed to raise some funds, and they set up the initial children's home, which is where the Children's Society started. I don't think it was called the Children's Society then. I think it was called the Church of England Home for Waifs and Strays, because the Victorians like telling it like it is. But that's the origins of TCS, and that's where it began. So there's always been a connection with the Church of England and with churches. And I'm probably the end of that line. That's what it looks like today in part.
So kind of the connection, it's very important to still have that tradition and that connection, because we get so much support from parishes, churches all over. So it's really amazing that we've got people like you that can keep up that connection. So can you tell me a bit about your diocese?
Right, the diocese, I think the first thing to say is everybody in the country, in England, lives in a diocese, because everybody lives in a parish. The way the Church of England has done is that the whole country is divided up into little areas of land, and at the heart of each area there is a parish church. And probably if you look, you can find out what your parish church is. You tend to find out what it is when you want to get married, or when you want to have a baby baptized or something like that. So a parish is a church in an area. And then when you group a whole bunch of parishes together, you get a diocese. And at the heart of a diocese, there's always a cathedral. So anytime you come across the word cathedral, that's the centre of a diocese. So Portsmouth Diocese is based on Portsmouth Cathedral. We're one of the smaller dioceses, so we contain the city of Portsmouth, which is just under 200,000 people strong. It's a naval city. It's a jump-off point for the continent if you want to catch a car ferry and go to France or Spain. lots of Victorian terraced housing, a little bit of seaside. You can go down to Southsea, which has got a seaside resort and one-armed bandits and fun fairs and beaches and things like that. And then as you come out of Portsmouth, you get to suburbia. I live in part of suburbia. And then further out of that, as you head up the A3, you got some really beautiful Hampshire villages. So also within Diocese, you've got some chocolate box villages where you've got, thatched cottages and woodlands and lovely stuff like that. And we have the Isle of Wight, not to forget the Isle of Wight. So a boat ride away, all of that is also part of Portsmouth Diocese. So it's quite diverse. You've got inner city, you've got suburbia, and you've got countryside.
And I suppose with that, because it's so diverse, with that comes also, unfortunately, many different problems and quite a lot of maybe disparity. Would you say that's the case?
I think in any area, there's huge variation. So the city has huge variation. There's a very wealthy old Portsmouth end where the houses can be dated in their hundreds and hundreds of years, and people have gorgeous views looking out on the rivers, on the Solent and so on and so forth. And a block or two away, you've probably got poverty, overcrowding, young people in all sorts of issues and pickles. But even in the lovely rural areas, I mean, I've worked as a teacher in some nice leafy areas of Hampshire, which are really pretty well to do, but there's always youngsters there, even in those areas who are maybe young carers, or, their family unemployment or bereavement or family separation or mental health issues, either of the parents or of the youngsters themselves. All those issues exist throughout. So whenever I talk about the Children's Society, I think it's relevant to every community, not in the same ways, but relevant to every community. And I think that's why, one of my roles, which is to spread the good news about the Children's Society, that's why it's so useful to do. I think I can hook it onto anybody, anyway.
So why did you become an ambassador then?
I think just a little bit about me. I've always been involved in young people. And so there's a strand of my life which has been teaching. So when I finished my degree, I went straight into teaching. I've been a secondary school teacher for most of my career, both in the classroom, and I ended up being a school leader. So there's a sort of professional element to my life. At the same time, I've always had involvement in church-based youth work. So I've been a church youth worker, leader. And for about 25 years, my wife and we ran children's holidays. And so we got youngsters from all over the country to come together for a week or so. We'd do daft things and silly games and give them a good time and send them home. So it was the spiritual strand. I'm also a dad. I've got 3 youngsters. They've now left home, but so there's the parenting bit, which is part of my life. But the bit which I thought was missing, and it was only when I stepped down from being a head teacher and I started a new role, which gave me actually a bit more time in my life. I wanted to give something back, and I thought, how can I give something back to the area of life I've seen which is most needed at the moment? And when I was a Hampshire head, I was very aware that the sort of support for the youngsters in real difficulty was declining. Local authorities had much less money after the 2008-2009 crash. And the sort of support, the access to CAMS and things like that just went down and down and down. And the charity sector was becoming increasingly important. And I thought, well, is there a charity which works with young people that I'd like to offer my services to? And I'd known of the Children's Society of old. My mum was a great supporter of the Children's Society. So I was aware of it, and the church I attend has had a Children's Societies group. Though I must confess, I've never been involved with it. I've supported events and things they've done, and I'm very happy to raise money for them, but I've never sort of involved on it. But I contacted the Children's Society and said, look, I've got a gift of the gab. I don't mind talking to people. And I'd seen that they were looking for speakers, volunteer speakers, and that was where I started. So I put my hat into that ring, and they said yes. And within a year, they said, "Oh, do you fancy being a Diocesan Ambassador?" So really, I didn't ask to do that. That was offered. It's really the same role. It just gives a bit of a label and a bit of a tag, I think, for the diocese and for the Children's Society. It works both ways. And it means if they're offering a speaker, it comes with a little bit of a title. And I think, churches around the area can go, oh, we're getting the Diocesan Ambassador, which may sound grand. They get disappointed once they meet me, but the label gets me through the door, and that's the important bit.
No, that sounds like quite a journey to get to us, but also quite a reachable journey. I think a lot of people, especially what's come out in like the last few months, everybody kind of wants to help more in their community or further afield, but they think it's out of reach, and they think that maybe money is the only thing that's wanted, but it's not. It's also, we need people who have a connection, and that may not be because, like you said, you've not been directly involved, but you just have the same views as us, the same want almost, and people react to that.
I think also it is possible to learn the bits you don't know. So I didn't know the detail of the society, and on my way through, Jess and Ruth, who've both supported me as relationship managers, they've been very good at talking through with me, telling me, pointing resources, pointing out places on the website. So it is possible to learn the things you don't know, because you can't know it, but the society's huge, for goodness sake. But I think I can now do enough to hold my own with a general meeting. I think if I had to go on a specific topic, I'd have to do a bit more preparation. And the other thing is they let you in gently. They give you one talk to do, and how did it go? And here's some resources to help you if you need it. And then if that goes well, then they give you another one. So nobody's throwing you in the deep end. But still they're offering new challenges. And that for somebody like me, that's really exciting, And I'm happy to develop my role as time goes on.
Definitely. And what you've been involved with some other things since then. Did you get involved with the Young Carers Festival?
I did. I think it was Jessica, Jess Meal, who was one of my first relationship manager. I said, if I'm going to talk, I'd really like to say I've been to visit a Children's Society project, or I know something firsthand. And she said, you've got the Young Carers Festival just down the road from you. And I knew nothing of it. I knew about young carers, but I hadn't even properly made the connection between the Children's Society and young carers. And so I went and volunteered there, and I've done 4 of them now over the years. Unfortunately, we didn't get one this summer for obvious reasons. But the Young Carers Festival, do you think people know about young carers, Anna?
Well, we had a chat with some amazing young people who spoke to us about it. But please tell, some people who are watching this may not actually.
Okay. I came across them when I was working in a school, and a young carer is simply any young person who has a responsibility for caring for somebody else in their life, often a parent, possibly a grandparent, maybe a sibling. And it may be that they've got such a responsibility that their lives are curtailed as being a teenager, for example. So they don't have time to meet with their friends. They've got responsibilities at home. And the Young Carers Festival is the gathering of about 12 to 1,500 young people from all over the country who just spend a Friday night to Sunday afternoon camping in a field. They've got fantastic outward bound opportunities. They can kayak and raft ride, and they've got a fun fair, and they've got a disco, and they've got football fields and craft activities and all sorts. And it just allows these young people to be themselves and to have a really great time. And I went along, and so the first few years I helped in the kitchen, just moving food around, which was fine. And then 2019, last year, I was able to actually get out on the Saturday, and I supported the work of the Children's Society in doing various activities, just supervision and joining in. And it was absolutely fascinating. My wife joined me, and she was involved on a stand where young carers were asked, write on a post-it note, stuff you want schools to know. And when I read what was up on the board, I felt, I'd been a school leader, and you get very got to get to school on time. And there were young carers writing things like, I wish the school understood all the things I have to do before I get to school. I might have to get mum up, get her dressed, get her medication sorted before I get out of the door. And some mornings, mum just isn't going to move quickly. And if I'm late, the last thing I need is you putting me in detention because I'm late.
Yeah.
And I really could see that those sorts of messages being gathered, then got out again into schools, if that's how it ends up, is a really important role which comes out of it, in addition to the youngsters having a good time. And again, helping the Young Carers Festival was fantastic. No skills needed. Just be yourself, and they'll slot you into somewhere. So that was really good, really helpful.
Yeah, it sounds an incredible experience, but also a lot of my friends, I know a lot of people out there are thinking, well, I don't have any experience with, I believe in everything that the Children's Society are doing, but I don't have any experience with young people. And it's an easy way to get in, like what you're saying. There's always a role for you, whether that is just listening to a young person and sharing their story, or whether it is going along to an event, or it could be sharing a campaign ask or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've spoken a bit about your role, but about the link with the diocese. But why else do you think your role is so important, especially in the grand schemes of things, when the world is a very busy place right now?
Well, I mean, the Children's Society does so much work these days, which is contract based. Some local authority says we want a service, and you tender for it and you get the job. But actually, I think the work that I do, that I'm involved in, does two things, and I would say it's important for two reasons. Firstly, it raises significant amounts of money for the society to do things outside of the contracts. So there are things that the society does. I understand that the Good Childhood Report is funded by fundraising. There is no sponsor for it. So things that I get involved in, I play a very tiny part in it. So, for example, I support Christingle services. Well, each Christingle might raise only 100 or 200 quid. But if you put them together from all the Christingle events across the country, it raises over £1 million. That's a significant sum of money. Some of our older supporters have little collection boxes. There are people who still use coins. I know, it's amazing, isn't it? But they do. And the little box which sits on the shelf for a year, it might only have 30, 40 pounds in it. But in each year, those boxes together raises things like, towards $1 million or beyond £1 million. And that's a significant sums of money for the society. And I think that that makes it worthwhile. I need to encourage people to do that. And that's part of my role, to say, keep going. And if you can spread the word and get more people with collection boxes, or more people giving to Christingle or whatever, that's fantastic. But I also think the campaigns thing is really important. And I do have an opportunity to speak to numbers of people at a time. Many times people who have church connections also have a motivation to make the world a better place, and they just need pointing in the right direction. So if we can find the right campaign for the right group and say, seriously awkward, or whatever the appropriate campaign is, and this is how you can write to your MP or the local council or whatever. I think that's, I won't say it's enormously important, but I play a part in the puzzle, a part in the work of the society, and that's really good for me.
I think it's also important. It's a really important part to play, because we're becoming a lot more served a lot more with information on our phones, on our laptops, as soon as we open our phones. So it is quite hard for a charity to kind of cut through and really get a person's attention. And that is why storytelling is the oldest thing ever. I mean, obviously, probably isn't, but storytelling has been used for centuries as a way of telling traditions, telling people what is needed in the world, and it's still a huge thing right now, which is what you do.
Well, yes, and I was really brought to order, I think, by Mark Russell, who had visited the Young Carers Festival last summer, and I was at an event where he was talking about it. Actually, it was just a meeting where he was talking about it. And I've told you about the Young Carers Festival. 1,200 children come across; they have a great time. But actually, when Mark talked about it, the way he did it, I haven't got the full details, but it went something like this. I sat down at a craft table and I said to the girl opposite, "So, Sarah, who do you care for?" And Sarah said, "Well, I care for my mum, because she has very severe epilepsy, and she therefore cannot be trusted around hot objects. So all the ironing and all the cooking and anything involving heat, I have to do, because if she were to have a fit, that would be dangerous for her. So I have all those responsibilities. Of course, says Mark, that's a lot. Oh, and my dad. And your dad? Yeah, my dad, he's got some sort of organ failure, so he's bedbound for most of the time, and I have to do also all the coordination with the hospital to make sure he gets his transfusions or whatever he needs. I also, talk to the doctor's surgery regularly. Gosh, that's a lot of work. Oh, and my brother. And your brother? Yeah, he's got high anxiety because of autism, and I often have to calm him down to help him cope with school and so on and so forth. And it occurred to me that Mark telling that story actually was far more powerful than the facts of the Young Carers Festival. If you say that this young girl, this is her life, this is the struggle she faces. Oh, and yes, the final question to Sarah was, and what does the Young Carers Festival mean to you? And she said, for a weekend, I can be a child. For a weekend, I can just live my life, have some fun with some friends, and I don't have to worry about responsibilities at home. That is such a powerful sell for the festival and for young carers and so on and so forth. And that really struck me, that actually what I need to do when I'm talking about the Children's Society is, yes, you can talk about the fact of when it was founded and so forth. But once you personalize it and you give it a story, people get it and people understand it. So I'm delighted when the Children's Society produces a publication or puts on the website a little example, a story. And it's my job to sort of bring that alive or to retell it so it fits the purposes of the group I'm talking to. So, if you work for the Society and you've got stories, I don't know what the mechanism is to pass them on, but, please keep doing that, because it's good for us. It stops it being a dry thing. It stops it involving real youngsters and making a real difference.
And it doesn't matter how many times someone's heard a story, it still grips them, because I've heard that story from Mark Russell from his own lips several times.
You probably told it a bit better.
Oh, it never gets less heart-wrenching. And I'm somebody that is surrounded by these stories every day. So to somebody who's never heard of that story before, that is so powerful. And it, especially with what's going on right now, everything's becoming a lot more virtual and a lot more everyone's communicating digitally. Storytelling is still so important, and that kind of leads us on to talking about, before we know it, Christingle season is going to just be surrounding us, basically. And I'm sure you've probably been involved in that too. How do you think that's going to be affected right now? And what do you think we need to do as supporters to do with it?
Christingle started life as a church service, and often it is a church service. Lots of churches hold Christingles, usually in the month of December. There are a few exceptions. And children come together, they usually sing some carols, and they build or come away with a Christingle, which is an orange with a candle and some bits of fruit and a red ribbon around the orange, and the whole thing's got symbolism. And it's a chance to talk about the meaning of Christmas, talk also about what the Children's Society does, and people less well off than yourselves, and hopefully putting your hand in your pocket and putting some money towards the work of the Society. And traditionally, they're done in groups. So I've done school assemblies and I've done church services. My own church, we have 2 Christingles traditionally on Christmas Eve. We have them at 2:30 and 4 o'clock, and the place is packed. The community comes because they know they're going to have a short, sharp exploration of Christmas, some familiar carols, some songs that kids sing at schools, and they'll make a Christingle and go away with a little homily, and we throw a bucket at them as they leave, so they put some money in as they go. We usually get 300 to 400 of each service. Our church limit at the moment is 32 people. So we haven't decided what we're going to do, but my understanding is that the team behind Christingle are working on some COVID versions of Christingle, and they will be flexible, and it'll be down to you to decide what works for our area. So the sorts of things I've heard about, and I must confess, I looked on the website today, the resources aren't up yet, so I hope I'm not talking complete nonsense. But things like you might be able to hold it outside. not with the current restrictions of groups of 6, because that wouldn't work. But if that breaks down, you could have an outdoor service that might give you a bit more distancing. You could do it as a remote thing. So you put something on Facebook or YouTube, and you simply say to families, come and collect your Christingle kit, which could be a party bag full of all the bits. And then you can build the Christingle while the local service is gone through on the video. That could be done. Some places I've heard about doing a movable Christingle. So you walk around your community. So a family could say, we're going to do Christingle. You don't have to do it all at the same time. So you can do it perhaps over a week. And you'll get directed to various people's front gardens. And in their front gardens, they have something. You know, they've got the collection of the candles or the oranges or the ribbons. And somebody will tell the story. There's all sorts of possibilities. So though I think it's vital that we continue with Christingle in some form, so that when we can come back to normality, they reoccur, because we haven't had this break. But I think one of the things I need to do is the churches who I have contact with is to try and encourage them to think, what's the creative solution for them? Whoops, sorry.
It's all right. Ian is using a mobile tablet. So as we know, tech is not normally our best friend. So I'm just going to wait for him to come back in, because he will. And I'll just carry on chatting with you guys. We've had some fab messages from you guys. Tracy, wonderful that you give your time in this way. And that is really, really important, actually, because without people like Ian, without people like you at home who are watching, here he is. Speaking.
Sorry, I waved my hands around and I knocked you off.
Okay, over. So you were saying that you need to be in touch with your local communities, and
just to help them think through the possibilities, because I think the worst thing will be people to say it's too difficult to do this year, we can't do anything. And I think what we want to be able to do is to say, yes, it won't be the same as before, but you can still do a Christingle, and here are some options. You know, let's see if we can work it out together. I mean, it might even be I do a diocesan Christingle on a video and just put it on my YouTube channel and say to a church, if you want to just use this 15 minutes, you know, point people to it or steal it and put it in your service, whatever, you know. So there's all sorts of possibilities.
And I think it's also, Christmas is, whether you are religious or you're not religious, Christmas is, you know, a moment in the calendar where people are reflecting upon the year that's just passed. And we know this year's not been the best. So we kind of want to, I know me personally, I want to make sure that we still don't know what the restrictions are going to be, but Christmas is still going to be as Christmas as we can make it. And whether that is virtually family orientated and community orientated, still we're going to have that. And just think of the stories we're going to have next year about how we've overcome with this.
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Ian. You've been absolutely amazing to chat to. I've learned so much. And yeah, guys at home, if you've been inspired to know that you are wanted and you are needed to support the Children's Society, and all it is you can become a speaker. You can just share things about us. Do get in touch with us. And if you're also watching, you have some fab stories that you could share with Ian, again, get in touch and we can pass them on. So I hope everybody has a lovely rest of the day, and I will see you all next week. So bye, Ian. Bye, everybody.
Bye.